So welcome. So I think everybody probably knows who I am, Executive Director here at CFGA, and kind of been leading this part of the project. And so welcome to our wrap-up workshop. A little bit unique, I think we would have normally been doing this prior to or after our annual conference, which went on the line this year due to COVID. So we're taking the opportunity to bring folks together and have a chat about this, and we will be recording it. So I guess this has created a new challenge, I guess, in getting together and collaborating, but also an opportunity by way of recording the work that we've done so it can live in perpetuity. So we will be posting this on the website, and Kaylee's going to be breaking up the individual presentations so you don't have to watch the entire 5 hours. You can grab the topics you'd like. So just a little bit about the CFGA. I've been around for about 12 years, and I'll speak in about an hour about kind of the expert committee on forages and kind of the genesis of the CFGA organization as a whole. But I think it's important to point out, entirely funded through administration on projects and membership. So got a lot of really strong partnerships that have evolved over the last couple of years. So thanks to all those folks that have worked with us on this project to bring it through to fruition, and you're going to hear a little bit later about what that is done in terms of the development of new opportunities for the CFGA. And that bottom line right there, passion for grassland systems is what we're driving on here, and I think that rings as true today as it ever did. A little bit about the industry. As we know, we're looking at 70+ million acres across the country, and roughly split between that native kind of rangeland and tame forage and pasture ground that would probably be integrated in annual cropping systems. So for context, looking at 39% of Canadian agricultural production, and so we're the largest crop, well ahead of wheat and canola. So carrying a pretty big swath of influence, I guess, across the landscape, and we're starting to see that, I think, with some of the new programs that have been announced around either addition of grasslands on the landscape or conservation of the ones that we have. So exciting times for the forage industry. Looking at billions of dollars worth of value, third largest crop after wheat and canola. Now I've got an asterisk up there on that. I've been using this slide for a while. This is coming out of a report of 2012. And you're going to note from Graham's slide deck at the end of the day how the net farm receipts in the industry, Canadian ag sector as a whole, have grown significantly since this time. So I put an asterisk there to say it is dated, but I think the impact of this message is still clear. Very significant contributor to the Canadian economy. And then you take a look at that environmental impact, and you can't go very far in popular press these days in agriculture or otherwise and not hear about agriculture's contribution to the environment. Most of it good. Sometimes it's on the other side of the equation, but even still, there's a lot of talk about this. And again, back to 2012, some of the estimates that Dr. Youngblood had put together for us, showing just under $1 billion to just under $2 billion in annual kind of indirect environmental impact to Canadian society. So really important, I think, the work that we've done over the last couple of years, and a lot of the work that our partners are doing across the country to really evaluate and figure out how to monetize this significant contribution. A little bit on our core priorities. These really haven't changed since the last time we ran our strategic planning process, which I guess the last strat plan is dated 2017, and we're currently going through a review of that right now with our partner provinces to update and make sure we're staying on track there. Let's go through these quickly. Extension capabilities have really been a big part of what we've settled into, and as we walk through the results of our AGGP project today, a lot of the work was, there was definitely some R&D in early days, and the BMP guide was put together, but all those things supported getting out on the landscape and going one-on-one with the grower community. So the things we work at here nationally, running the annual conference. We are online this year, a whole new ball game for all of us. We're staying with that format this year. We're going to be online again. Let this COVID thing get past us. We didn't want to have to push any envelopes there. So looking forward. Our committee is hard at work, and I don't want to let the cat out of the bag because that wouldn't be fair for our official launch. But I think you're going to be very pleased with what you see coming out of that this year. We're pretty excited. Our newsletters, we have a relationship with Farm Business Communications. So you see us across all those publications, and then our active social media strategy. Most importantly, I think when it comes to getting out on the landscape is our relationship with the provincial forage associations, and really working hard to make sure that programs that we're delivering nationally really focus on their ability to take the information down to the ground level. R&D, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, and some of the most of the projects we're running right now are not obviously involved in fundamental research. You see folks like Beef Cattle Research Council and Dairy Farmers of Canada through their programming, investing heavily in that fundamental research, and hats off to them for that leadership role that they're playing there. Really trying to focus in that middle ground and taking that kind of that academic type research work and putting it into bundles of projects or programs or initiatives that can be delivered out on the landscape and see that change happening with our growers. So obviously very, very diverse sector, coast to coast. A lot of it's based on water and soil type, but also the way we use forages across the country. So important for us to continue to communicate in as much as possible and make sure that everybody has a voice around that table. I think the bottom line here, that continuum, I guess, between research, development, extension, and evaluation, that's really where we've tried to lay our focus. And again, working to be that tip of the spear to get information out onto the landscape. Policy exploration, obviously, we'll talk a little bit this later, but the most kind of probably hot one right now is the ecological goods and services, and so whether or not it be biodiversity or carbon or water, I guess is another big piece. We're working to stay up to date and engaged in as much as possible there. So the last one here is that environmental recognition, and so we've again mentioned this with the greenhouse gas quantification, the work we've done on the grasslands protocol over the last 4 years to get that built, and now launched into an agri-risk soil carbon pilot project with our partner Shell and most of the major land trusts across the country to sign up acres under that carbon offset trading system and move that out. Learn what works and what doesn't, and Karen's going to take us through that in a few moments. Also, we've been very pleased to work with Environment and Climate Change Canada over the last couple of years on our Nature Fund project, seeking to build habitat assessment tools that can be deployed across the country to support that biodiversity and habitat management. So that's the background. So to where we are with this project, here we are 5 years later. We submitted this thing in July of 2016 and got approved in February 17. The project proposal, like say, the reason I went through some of those objectives earlier is we really built the project proposal to support the R&D function and that extension and awareness function that the CFGA and its provincial partners, were seeking to fill. So that was where the pilot projects really became a big part of this project, and they've rolled out over the last couple of years. You're going to hear about successes that we've had across the country, and certainly has supported the engagement, I guess, of our expert committee and forages at the annual conferences. And when I talk about the BMP manual and how that came to light, I'll reference all the various meetings that we had there. So we had 4 major deliverables. The first 2 are certainly around the protocol, and number 1 was to build that current state of science around carbon sequestration and what it means for BMPs. And I'll let Karen take us through what we found there. But build out the quantification protocol and then the best management practices guide to help growers implement BMPs on the landscape. And then the last one is pilot protocol development. So it's how we've built our workshop today to highlight each one of those deliverables. So why the AGGP project? Why so important? I already mentioned about the Canadian forage and grassland industry's contribution to EG&S. The dairy industry is talking about it. See, Coralino's on here with us today from with the sheep folks. Certainly the beef sector has been very, very active with this, with their CRSB, and lots of conservation groups talking of the same language. So really what we set out to do here was to provide some progress on how to quantify. Now you notice I said progress, not answers, specifically how, because this is a work in progress. This is an all hands on deck kind of situation where we need to be collaborating, and Brian's going to take us through that this afternoon about some ideas that we have on how we can do that to continue to plug gaps in science. We're all very well the carbon tax program that's been implemented by the federal government and the offset system that's coming. So you've got the tax, and then you've got the credit system that's coming to offset that. So we wanted to do what we could to provide, again, a foundation for discussion on how the grassland sector can play a role in primarily delivering carbon offsets to market. And the last one, which is near and dear to my heart, if you know what I do at a personal level, a lot of my career has been spent trying to drive this high performance forage management concept, and so really maximizing the genetic potential of the species and cultivars we're putting in the ground, and so that's where a lot of our BMP ideas were centered around. So there's no question, there is a divide between some of the what we might call rangeland, or some of that native type rangeland out west. So I'm putting there generally permanent. Karen's going to talk about the importance of permanence, why that was built into the protocol, and Graham will mention that a little bit later. But that is that long-term carbon sink, and generally in those semi-arid dryland ecosystems. So that's really where the Canadian Grasslands Protocol finds its home and is going to have the greatest applicability. But we've heard time and time again, what about the other half of the Canadian forage sector? And again, we haven't lost sight of the importance of moving into some sort of measurement-based protocol, which we've called phase 2. So i.e. practice A equals carbon X, practice B equals carbon Y. And this is where the carbon roadmap will help us to define our science, maybe methodologies and our reporting and our collaborations, so that we can start to target, ideally, carbon sequestration rates to individual BMPs. So rest assured, we're moving on the avoided conversion protocol, but next phase is certainly to the rest of the other half of the sector. So in the larger context, and I've said this before, you've heard me say this before, I mean, there's really two types of value being generated here, and there's dollars in your genes, and again, that would be dollars in the genes of the producer. And again, I'll allude to some of the comments that Graham Gilchrist is going to talk about later with respect to the difference in value between advanced management practice and getting more yield on the field versus generating revenue through carbon. And there's a bit of a divide there that he'll discuss. So the second piece of this is really the public trust. And so we talked about the value of EG&S contribution in Saskatchewan, right? 1 to 2 billion-ish, right? So if that is the contribution that we can estimate but not measure, then does that stimulate an opportunity or create an opportunity for public investment in either the conservation or increased management or management change within our grasslands across the country? So the task at hand is really to maintain those carbon stocks. So that's the question: how do we do that? And if you take a really high level look at the 2011 to 2016 Census of Agriculture data, we lost 4.9 million acres of grasslands. So, I get comments all the time, well, Cedric, that's really not that accurate. No, you're right. It's not, but it's the best that we have right now. And there are other initiatives at play to see us through that. But even still, even if we're by 10, 15, 20%, right, we're still looking at millions of acres of grasslands that have been converted within a 5-year period. And I don't think we've seen necessarily a slowing down of that as of yet, but I will stand to be corrected. So the last one, I guess, there towards integration within this larger context and going to phase 2 of the protocol, if we can see more perennial crops integrated with annuals, if we can see more diversified rotations, if we can see more integration, more reintegration, I should say, of the cropping and livestock systems that really characterize Canadian agriculture across Canada with the mixed farm models that have largely, we've kind of broken those things apart and we've become very specialized. And so while that's created some opportunities, I think we've also given something up there as well in terms of cropping system diversity. So that's the larger context I think we need to be driving towards. I'm going to talk about this one again, and I'll just leave you with this. Big focus CFGA is continued engagement with our strategic partners. So, and this is across the board, not just on this project, but on all of our projects. We've got some pretty exciting things coming out of the CFGA, with some of the projects being led by Dr. Maxime Leduc over the next, we've been delivering over the last month or so, and they're going to be launched right away. Exciting things coming with Shell and some other ideas in the pipeline. So I'll leave you with thanks for being here. There's a lot of different organizations represented all the way across the country, and we're maintaining this open tent policy. Very excited to continue to work with you on these new projects.